Have you ever just kind of gone on social media to look at a post and think, what were they thinking? Like, honestly, could they be any more idiotic? Well, that's what this show is going to do. That's what this show does. We take a look at the most ridiculous and outlandish and pathetic social media posts and we dissect them. So get ready. This is DC Reality.
Hey, buddy, eyes up here.
Around doing important stuff.
Okay, this does not look like this is gonna end well. For you guys.
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me? Who's got...
What's going on? I am your host, Slav, and this is Slav's Free Talk DC Reality Check. I'm thinking this is going to be a weekly show. I really do. This is where we sit back, take a look at all of the ridiculous social media posts and claims and just the ridiculousness that goes on online over the course of a week. So, without further ado, let's get into some things here. Actually, let's see. Anybody here? Johnny Dome's here, says hi. Hi, Johnny Dome. How's it going? All right. Let us take a look here. Before we get into it, I do want to remind people that I do have a book coming out soonish. I have a date. That's in the near future, but until I get the okay from a couple people that I have proofreading it for me, I'm not going to announce that date. But right now, you can go check out a lot of fun. You can support me in accomplishing and finishing this book and doing a lot of other things because I've already got the outline for the follow-up to this book started. So this will help in a lot of ways getting these completed. Because I want to get actual real artwork done. I don't want to use AI artwork for the cover or anything like that. But it's called The Snyder Effect. And it covers what happened for DC, specifically the DCEU from the beginning, from where they came up with the conception and the idea of Man of Steel all the way to its demise in 2023 when Aquaman 2 came out, or was it 20, whatever it was, until its demise then at the end of 2022, maybe is what it was. But that is what the book is about, and I'm excited about it. If you go to my website, slavsfreetalk.com, and then you click the Snyder Effect archive right there, it'll take you to it. It is a membership, so you do have to pay just $3.99 a month to get some benefits here of some of my commentary on what my thought process is and what I'm doing to get the book completed. You could also read the prologue, which I put up there. I plan on releasing excerpts from different chapters to kind of hype up and get people excited for the book. You can see some of the abandoned chapters that I was writing, and then I either just gave up halfway through that chapter because I feel like, hey, it doesn't fit for the book, or I talked about it elsewhere and I didn't need to talk about it in a full chapter. So you can see some of those abandoned chapters here, which will continue to build as the proofreads get completed and I find, hey, I got to remove this and stuff like that. You can see a lot of the stuff that I've gone through. This isn't all of it because as I'm going through and proofreading myself more and more, I want to make sure I have all of my backup, all of the information, all my sources for the information that I have in the book. And here you can see a lot of what I've already put down on that aspect, as well as reference videos of where I got some of the information, some of the videos I watched, actually a lot of the videos I watched, and the information is right here. So yeah, if you want, you can go check that out and support me for that. So I hope you do. All right, let's get into it here because I want to get into this. First off, Movie Talk Now says, happy Friday. What's going on? Funny Guy 9000 says, yo, what's going on? let's see, is that Alan Emocab? Or look, I'm terrible with names. So if I say your name wrong, I apologize. Says, hello, how's it going? All right, let's get into this, guys, because this week was a wild week when it comes to being a DC fan. This week was a wild scenario of just ridiculousness. And the first thing I want to post, and look, you're going to see I have about 6 or 7 things that I'll talk about here. And the first one I'm going to pop up is this from KS052020 on X. And he says, Zack Snyder is the only director in history to be punished for making successful movies. Look, this is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous claim because if you think about it, just for a second, he was never punished for making successful films. He was part of a conglomerate under DC Studios that they were struggling as a whole to complete and make films there. Man of Steel was a group effort. Christopher Nolan, David S. Goyer, Zack Snyder, they all made Man of Steel. And while Man of Steel is my favorite movie, superhero movie of all time, there are people who do not appreciate that film and probably never will appreciate that movie. And that was the start. That was the start of the issues. Warner Brothers still had confidence in Zack, though. They still had confidence in Zack. They then did Batman v Superman. Again, it wasn't just Zack Snyder doing it. It was a group of people that were involved. Chris Terrio, Zack Snyder, Christopher Nolan was a producer on it, and so on and so forth. And that was another one that failed. And then we know what happened with Justice League. Now, is he being punished because he released, they allowed him, or I should say, AT&T, when they came and took over, they allowed him to release the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League? No, he's not being punished for that because there was never anything given to him as a assurance that, hey, you'll get to continue after this. To the contrary, he was actually told, hey, this is a one and done type of thing. We're going to do this and there's nothing else promised after this. And that's the thing that people don't understand. These crazies out there, and yes, they are crazies because they're obsessed and they can't get past the fact that Zack Snyder is no longer doing DC stuff. But what they don't understand is how the industry works is you get hired as a director, as a filmmaker, you get hired to do a film, to do a movie. And if it doesn't work out the way the studio wants, they will move on to somebody else. That's how it works. That is how Hollywood has always been, whether right or wrong. And you may sit there and some of you may think, well, that's wrong. They shouldn't do it that way. Well, unfortunately, that is the way it works. And you have to kind of deal with it because that's the way it's done. So Zack Snyder wasn't punished for making successful films. He was not even punished at all. He was moved, like they moved on from him because the studio wanted to go in a different direction. If they were massively successful films, if they were undeniable, huge hits, audience loved them, do you really think they would have done that? No, they wouldn't have gone another direction. They would have stuck with him and continued going. But the fact of the matter is they were divisive films. Sure, they made some money, but they were highly divisive, and the studio did not want to be in the divisive business, plain and simple. So to say something like this, just you can tell that these people just have no real understanding of how, one, the business works, and two, idiotic they sound. It's pathetic. It truly, truly is pathetic. Next up, though, we have another one that is kind of humorous. This one here from Santa Man says, funny how people make fun of Zack Snyder, but it's Josh Whedon that made Steppenwolf look like this. And Zack Snyder revamped it. Well, again, this is another example of the message, of the idea, of the concept of what has happened. It's just lost on people. Okay, the Steppenwolf you see to the left here, the one that was in 2017's Justice League, was a Zack Snyder design. That was Zack Snyder's design. Now, granted, that's not the design that he wanted originally. No, the one that was in the Snyder Cut is the design that he actually wanted. But the studio looked at him and talked to him and said, look, we don't want something that looks that alien. We want something that's a little more human, maybe even a little closer to the comic book aspect, so on and so forth. And this is the design that Zack Snyder approved for his film. But you have these people who sit here and twist facts, twist history, twist the idea of what actually happened. And it's really, really sad because this is the toxicity. This is the misinformation that I always push back on. Because look, I'm okay with you sitting there. If this person would have said, can you believe that the studio made Zack Snyder use this Steppenwolf when this great design was sitting right here? Hey, absolutely accurate, true, perfect. But to sit there and say that Josh Whedon made Steppenwolf look like this, yeah, that wasn't Josh Whedon's design. Sure, he may have changed the coloring and the color grading on the film and made it not look great because that's what Josh Whedon's do, but the design was a Zack Snyder approved design for his movie that he made for 2017's release, because that is how a studio works. They work together in making a movie, specifically high budget films. That's what they do. So to sit there and act like, oh, this is Josh Whedon, Zack had nothing to do with it, is narratively false. And you should not be doing that because it's pathetic. It's sad. You should not be behaving like this, people. It is not that big of a deal. It's not that serious. We got the Snyder Cut. Why are you still complaining about what happened in 2017? The Snyder Cut is out. You never, ever, ever have to watch that movie ever again. You can watch the Snyder Cut as much as you want. You never even have to acknowledge 2017's Justice League. But your obsession, your hatred, your toxicity cannot allow you to just ignore what really isn't important. And it's sad. It's sad. And that's how we've gotten to where we are today with the Snyder Bros, with the Snyder Cult, with what is going on. And if you ask me, like honestly, if you ask me, this is a big problem with the fan base because they can't just let go. They can't let go. They got their victory. They got their victory of the Snyder Cut. We got it. I got it. We all got it. We all got the Snyder Cut. We don't need to worry about what happened in 2017's film anymore. Now, I'm not sitting there to say, let's forget about what happened. Let's forget about how they treated Zack Snyder. No. But let's also not forget that those people that mistreated Zack back then are no longer with the company. So again, when you sit there and complain and bitch and moan, you look like a complete fool because it makes no difference. What's going on in 2026 makes no difference to what happened in 2017 at this point. But hey, you guys do you, I guess, right? Because it's giving me content. It's giving me content to discuss on my channel. All right, before we move on to the next one, let's see what you guys are saying over in the comments. Let's see. The funny guy said, oh, wrong button. He says, did they forget Disney with Dana Terrence? Remember, I keep pressing the right button. Remember the DCEU slate back on CW? I do. I remember that DCEU slate. It was called The Dawn of the Justice League. I actually go over that in the book that's coming out soon, in a few months' time that I wrote. And I tell you what, the excitement level for that was huge, but that DCEU slate was it wasn't. To me, like looking back on it now, it wasn't all it was cracked up to be, because little did we know that there was it wasn't infinite. It wasn't going to be a long running universe because Zack Snyder had an end to what he wanted to do. So Batman would have died. You would have had an older Lois Lane. It would have jumped up into there's a bunch of aspects of it that just kind of annoying, kind of ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, at the time, sure, it was awesome, but it wasn't great in hindsight. Johnny Dome, Captain Marvel joins the chat. All right. A funny guy says, well, it's all good. Dana Terrence is with Glitch Productions now. Let's see. What else do we got? Johnny Dome says, Captain Marvel was successful and got punished for it being bad. It was all right. It wasn't a great movie. Funny guy asked, so Zack Snyder made 2017 Steppenwolf? Yes, he did. Zack Snyder actually is the one who helped create and approve that design of Steppenwolf in 2017. Let's not forget that there were trailers, there were things, images, things like that of Steppenwolf while Zack Snyder was still in charge of doing, as he was the director of Justice League in 2017. Like, he is the one that approved these designs because that was, again, it was one of those things that the studio, they looked at his design, they thought it was too scary. They didn't want to do that alien look. They wanted to get something that was a little more not friendlier, but not as scary looking, something that was a little more close to the comic, and that design is the one they ended up getting. Again, it wasn't Josh Whedon that did it. It was Zack Snyder. Movie Talk Now says Zack Snyder had the benefit no directors had. Post-game quarterbacking. He could revise what people didn't like, and he had actual opinions and time to work with. Yeah, he definitely did. He got something, like he said, that no director ever gets to do, is once a movie's released, once a story's released, once something's out, he had the ability to go back and say, you know what? People don't like this. People don't like this. Let's adjust this. Let's do this. The problem is he did that with Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is a vastly better movie than 2017's. It is a good movie, but he still flubbed it up. There were still many issues with that movie that you could have cut down, like 30, 40 minutes of the movie. You could have removed a lot of that slow motion. There's scenes that you could have removed that were completely insignificant to the story. There's so much that he could have just removed, a lot of fluff that just didn't need to be there, that even with him having the ability to have the hindsight and the know-how and the knowledge of what was going on, he still flubbed it up a bit. And to sit there and act like he was punished for failure or for successes is asinine, is ridiculous, because he is not perfect. And while Zack Snyder's Justice League was a success and was great to see, he still flubbed it up. It still wasn't a perfect movie. Movie Talk says Slav needs to make a video, huge Zack Snyder myth, with that segment from today's live. Let's see. Alan says, or Lane said, I'm sorry with the name. It baffles me that those people want to see the DCU fail. It baffles me too. I don't get it. I don't understand why somebody who loves the IP wants to see it fail. Okay, look, there's two ways you can look at this. You can look at it as, I don't like James Gunn, but I hope that he is successful. And then there's a way that says, I don't like James Gunn, I want him in the DCU to fail because reasons. And there's two ways to look at it. Okay, like I stated years ago, even before James Gunn was in charge, I don't care who runs DC. I just want them to be successful. I want them to make a universe that is exciting, that is fun, that I like to watch. James Gunn got it. I'm a fan of James Gunn. So I was excited. Hey, James Gunn running DC Studios, that's going to be great. I think he's a great writer. I think he's really smart when it comes to comics. So let's see what happens. Some people don't like him. Okay, you don't need to like him, but you could still hope that it's successful, that things in that universe will hit your fancy, will tickle your fancy a little bit, and you'll enjoy it. And some people just don't get that. They don't get it. Johnny Dome says, so Zack Snyder wasn't the only one doing a successful movie and got punished for it. Yeah, exactly. He's the only one that got punished. No one else did, according to them. Let's see. Not sure where you're going with this, Movie Talk. He says, I wasn't thrilled when Dragon Ball Daima was announced. Everyone turns into kids, but I wanted it to succeed because it does more Dragon Ball. It means more Dragon Ball content. If it failed, we would have less. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Daima either. It seems like they wanted to kind of retcon GT a little bit. But no, I see where you're going with here. Like, you don't have to love every single thing that comes out of your franchise that you enjoy. But you should always hope that, hey, there's some sort of success. Or maybe because of the success, the next thing I will like. And that's what I don't get. I don't get it. Johnny Dome says, The Incredible Hulk, a moderate success, but got punished with recast and story change. Again, I mean, you see many examples like that. And the fact that these Snyder bros can't understand that is sad. All right, this one from JRT, who replied to James Gunn with this. Pathetic. Says, James Gunn starts releasing everything he got. Immediately they spoke about, like, first off, the English is terrible. Maybe they're not American. Maybe they don't speak English, and maybe it's not their first language, but still, it's terrible. I'll start again. James Gunn starts releasing everything he got immediately. They spoke about underperformance, trying to release all he got before that fire letter comes in, and 4 laughing emojis. Okay, guys, look, this is sad. This is pathetic. To sit there and make a post like this directed towards the actual studio head, the director, somebody who's running things, is sad. First off, it's inherently wrong because there are a plethora of announcements that came out way before this Superman underperformed crap. But there's so many things that are coming, that are announced, that are in the works. Plus, there are many that are in the works past that we don't know about, that we haven't seen or heard about. So to sit there and say this, all it does is spread misinformation. All it does is tell people who are coming new into the fandom, people who are interested to see what James Gunn is doing next, they're going to sit here and say, what is this person talking about? He's going to get fired. Then they're going to say, why do I want to get invested in something that's not going to have a completion? And that is pathetic. That is wrong. That is toxic. That is toxic behavior. But hey, this is how they all think. This is how they want things to go, because otherwise they will just simply lose their minds if James Gunn sticks around, because they can't handle facts. They can't handle the truth. They can't handle that people enjoyed Superman. They can't handle that people like Peacemaker. They can't handle that people like Creature Commandos. They can't handle that people are excited about Supergirl, Clayface, Lanterns, and so on and so forth. God forbid somebody is excited, people are excited and interested in what DC is doing that has nothing to do with Zack Snyder. God forbid. But again, you see these kind of people and they go out there and they make stupid comments like this, and they wonder why we call them out on it. They wonder why we tell them, you look like an idiot, because of things like this. This one, okay. I got to pull this one up because more disinformation that gets spread around. The Salt of the Earth, Shadiah Knight on X posts again. I'll ask, what was James Gunn thinking firing this guy? Just look at the aura, oozing on these pics. And they shared the pictures of Henry Cavill as the Highlander in the upcoming Highlander film. Is he playing Connor McLeod? I don't know which McLeod he's playing, but regardless, he is there. I don't know how many times this has to be discussed and it has to be mentioned. James Gunn did not fire Henry Cavill. James Gunn, Peter Safran literally had no idea what was going on because they weren't part of DC Studios. They didn't have DC Studios. They weren't even, Safran was, but James Gunn wasn't in the mix of things when it comes to Warner Brothers at the time. Yeah, he was hired by Hamada to write a script, but when a writer is hired to write a script, that doesn't necessarily mean they're in the studio and in the know of what is happening with every detail. He was writing another Superman movie per Walter Hamada. And then everything started to happen with Black Adam, Dwayne Johnson, he decided to bring Henry Cavill in last minute to shoot a cameo for the end of that movie. And then they apparently, rumor has it, he shot a cameo for Flash as well as another movie, Aquaman. And he shot those cameos that were supposed to come out. Black Adam came out. Henry Cavill goes online, says, everybody, I'm back. We have some exciting things that are going to happen with me as Superman. I'm back. I've taken the cape out of the closet, whatever he said. And James Gunn has stated, like, Peter Safran and I were shocked. We didn't know what was going on because we were just hired. We were just offered the positions as head of DC Studios. The announcement wasn't made yet, but we were just offered the positions, and we're starting to see that Henry Cavill is back as Superman when his plan was not that. That was not his plan. His plan was not to continue Henry Cavill. It was to reboot and restart a universe. Yet Henry Cavill's announcing that he's back. Now, on top of that, the contract was not yet finalized for Henry Cavill. This was all done out of promises, out of, hey, this is going to happen. Hey, handshake deals, that kind of thing. Which is why Henry Cavill then fired his managing team. He fired his managing team after all of this happened because they misled him. They're the ones that handled this so poorly and put him in a terrible, terrible situation. But again, people don't want to acknowledge that. They want to just see James Gunn. They want to find the villain of the story. And instead of looking at who the true villain was, they went, hey, you're the head of the studio. You're the villain, James Gunn. You fired Henry Cavill. How dare you? But it wasn't James Gunn's fault. What are you guys saying over here? All right. Let's see. Hunter Iggy says, "Did you see that what Aaron Fisher said in the video yesterday?" I did not. Again, I say it all the time. I don't go and watch their videos. I don't sit there and wait and see when they post to go watch a video. I will sometimes take a look at some like Aaron Fisher and Harsh Critic and Lethal Geeks and all of them. Like sometimes I'll take a look at their social medias to see if they're posting anything on their social medias to see how ridiculous they look there. But I don't watch their videos unless someone like you, one of my viewers or a friend of mine says, "Hey, you need to see what he said here because it is absolutely ridiculous." And at that point in time, maybe if I feel like it, I will go and watch the video to see how ridiculous it is. So no, I haven't seen Aaron Fisher's latest video because I kind of figured I knew what he was going to say about the whole thing. So I just wanted to ignore it is all. Let's see, Alan, whatever your name is, I'm sorry. Like I said so many times, I like the Snyderverse, but I want the DCU to succeed. As do I. I enjoyed the Snyderverse. I enjoyed what Zack Snyder was doing. I wish I could have seen the end of it, but the fact of the matter is I didn't. You didn't. None of us did. And it is what it is. Johnny Dome says, "Since Darkseid is confirmed in Mr. Miracle, I'm sure this Darkseid will be better than the DCEU. LOL, JK, I'm not that toxic." Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. Some people don't really understand, or not don't understand, but I don't think people realize that this is going to be a very different Darkseid than what we were seeing in Zack Snyder's. I think it's going to be way more comic accurate and things like that because that's what James Gunn is going for the most part, specifically with look. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And will it be better? I don't know. I don't know if it'll be better. I hope so. Because while I enjoyed what they were doing with Ray Porter and Darkseid there, we got a very small glimpse of him. So let's see what happens here. Let's see. Johnny Dome also says Tyrone Magnus finally did a good post. It was about the court thing. Oh, I didn't see that. Alan says James Gunn was devastated that he had to break it to Cavill about not playing Superman. He was. I mean, he was devastated. It was probably a horrible conversation that they had to have because, again, you have somebody who loved the character and portraying the character as much as Henry Cavill did. He was excited to finally have this idea because let's not forget that prior to that, he and Warner Brothers could not come to an agreement on a new contract. Henry Cavill believed that he was a much bigger star than he actually has been or ever was. He wanted paid buku bucks because he's like, look, I'm the Superman. I'm the star of the DC universe. I'm this, I'm that. I want to be paid like Robert Downey Jr. or something like that. I don't know what the exact amount was, but that's why they were negotiating, could never get a new contract because he wanted so much more money while Warner Brothers was sitting there like, look, man, you haven't had many successes as the character in the DCEU. We're willing to work with you. We're willing to build up to that, but we need to get back on track and really, truly build the character. And he just wasn't willing. He felt that he was worth a lot more money. So when everything came in with Dwayne Johnson, let's not forget that Dwayne Johnson was trying to take control of DC. Him and his $7 Productions wanted to run DC. They're the ones that wanted to take control. Henry Cavill, who's friends with The Rock, and his manager was The Rock's ex-wife, Danny Garcia, and everything just seemed like, hey, this will fall in place because they're going to pay me what I want. They're going to continue my story, so on and so forth. And then it just didn't happen because the right people weren't involved in the discussions, ultimately going, the heads of the studio went to DC or to James Gunn and Peter Safran. So Funny Guy says, oh yeah, the Snyder Bros is still crying about Darkseid, even though Darkseid exists in the DCU. Yeah. Movie Talk. People always say they feel bad for Henry Cavill. I do. But they never say they feel bad for Gunn, who started off with the previous team pulling a last-minute coup that was not recognized by anyone. Again, you should feel bad for Gunn having to deal with that. And he had to take the brunt of the negativity and the hatred and the toxicity and the anger that came from the fans because he was the head of the studio. He is the head of the studio. And it's not fair because it wasn't his decision. None of this was his idea, his plan. And other people came in and made it look terrible. All right. What else do we got here? Let's see. Where are we at? So to continue with the design or the look of Henry Cavill as McCloud and Highlander, we got this pathetic, most absurd, ridiculous post from Eastern Optic on X. Says that S is his identity now, the Superman. Now, this is something you have to see, because they're looking at his chest as he's dressed up for the Highlander role, and he's wearing like a red leather coat over or underneath a trench coat. And it just so happens that the fold of this red coat on the front, they say looks like an S right on his chest. And they say that S is his identity now, the Superman. I saw this and I busted out laughing, because it's this delusion. It's this belief that Henry Cavill can't do anything but be Superman, which is obvious with this fandom because they've never supported him in anything other than Superman. And even then they didn't support him when he came back in Black Adam. But that's the crazy thing, because every movie, anything that Henry Cavill does typically fails. Oh, but Mission Impossible that he was in was a success. It wasn't because of Henry Cavill. I can tell you that much right now. It wasn't because of Cavill. It was Tom Cruise. It was the name recognition of Mission Impossible. Sure, Henry Cavill, people were interested. Like, oh, let's see Henry Cavill in a different type of role. But you then take a look at all of his other movies, whether it's Argyle, whether it's that Ungentlemanly Warfare thing, whether it's The Witcher even, which The Witcher did well. It did well, but it started to fall off. You take a look at all these other projects that he's been in, and they're just not massively successful. They're not giving off Henry Cavill is a leading man, big, huge star. It just doesn't. So this idea that anytime they see Cavill, they automatically think Superman, well, it starts to make sense that that's why they don't watch these other movies, because they don't see him and they don't support him in anything else. What's even more ridiculous is whenever he did announce that he was returning as Superman back in 2022, when he did make that announcement, the sad part about all of that was people got upset because he was wearing the blue suit. They used John Williams theme music. He had the little curly Q in his hair. And they were mad about that. They were mad that Henry Cavill looked that way and not like he did in Zack Snyder's Justice League. The crazy thing is, this was Henry Cavill's idea. Like, this is what he wanted to do. He wanted to portray a more hopeful, a more respected Superman. They wanted to utilize the John Williams theme. They wanted to do the curly Q. They wanted to put the blue suit back on him. He wanted to be more hopeful. And the fans got upset about it. They got mad at Henry Cavill because of that. They then did not start to get on board with him being back until James Gunn announced that he would no longer, or no, it wasn't James Gunn, it was Henry Cavill, until Henry Cavill came out and announced that he was no longer doing it. So that's when people got on board and they were like, oh, how dare you? We lost out on getting Cavill. Well, you guys weren't all about it. You were pissed off because he wasn't doing the version that you wanted. Yet here we sit in 2026 now, and you're sitting there seeing that the folds in his coat look like a shield and an S, which they don't at all, but they say it does. Oh, man. And that's all you think about with Henry Cavill. Be damned whether he's a good actor. Be damned whether he's doing a different role in a different movie. Nope, it's all you think about is Superman. And it shows the delusion. It shows the I guess, the mental illness that these people have. I guess is a good way to put it. It's sad. It's sad and pathetic. Finally, I have this one from Matt Jarbo. And I thought this one was kind of ridiculous because he said on X, he goes, if Supergirl and Clayface fail, it will be up to James Gunn to direct all the DCU movies going forward. You know, I'm right. Now, I feel like he's being a little facetious here. I feel like he's just screwing around trying to egg on Donovan or something like that. Who knows? But I will say this. Why stir the pot? Why stir the pot like this? Because first off, if Supergirl and Clayface fail, well, that's a stretch because I don't think either one of them are going to fail, but I think it's a stretch. So now you're putting it out there. Oh, Supergirl and Clayface are going to fail. And then you're saying the thing that people don't want to hear. which is specifically from one section of the fandom, that James Gunn would direct everything then. It's just dumb. It's just asinine. We know that Matt Jarbo loves to start crap online. That's what he loves to do. That's what he does. It's how he acts. It's what he wants to do. Him saying this just was like, why are you stirring the pot here? Do you want to see a fight happen? Do you want to see people arguing back and forth? You have to be careful for people like this. You have to be careful for people who just post something specifically on social media to get a rise out of you, out of somebody else, and then start an argument, because then it just gives them a little clout or a little boost in their ego, thinking, oh, look what I did. Look at my post. It's getting 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 views. Oh, this is amazing. Look at all these interactions. Woohoo, I'm so cool. I mean, we know that's how Matt Jarbo is. We know. I mean, he does it all the time, but this is just dumb. This is just idiotic. Why would you even say anything like this is beyond me, because it's stupid. It is literally stupid. All right. What do we got over here? Let's see. Johnny Dome says the court thing show. Oh, there it is. The court thing shows Netflix still wants a theatrical window. Even though they want it less, even though they promise, they mentioned Warner Brothers do less than 45 inches anyway, they want less than normal. So this whole thing is interesting. We know that Netflix is looking at things logically. And this is something you all may not want to hear. And trust me, I don't want to believe it either. But because of the way things work post-theatrical release, the theatrical window and viability of movies staying exclusively in theaters, it isn't worth it to keep it in there for that long. The 45-day agreement that Hollywood studios and theater chains have made, that pretty much is the standard right now. However, there is that flexibility, and Ted Sarandos talked about that in the hearing and so on and so forth. But there's flexibility to it. There's an ebb and flow. If a movie does really, really well, it could be in theaters exclusively. Remember, exclusively for much longer. If it does very poorly, it'll come out of theaters exclusive, because it'd still be in theaters, but it'll go on digital sooner. Now, when you take a look at Warner Brothers, for instance, Superman was in theaters exclusively for 34, 35 days, something like that. It was something like that. One of their biggest hits of the year, Sinners, was in theaters for 39 days exclusively. 39 before it hit digital. So when you sit there and you take a look, okay, even their hit movies aren't sticking in exclusively to the full 45 days. What that metric is, how they decide when to pull a movie out of theaters exclusively, I don't know it. You don't know it. Everybody online, they don't know it. But they want to act like, oh, it sucks, it failed, it underperformed, that's why they pull it out. Well, that's not exactly it. That's not exactly how it works. So to sit there and say, oh, this is why it's not in theaters anymore, is just dumb. Now, I'm not going to talk about what Ted Sarandos said, because he was talking in a generalization. He was saying, look, you have movies that do well, that are in longer, movies that don't do well, that come out of, he said Superman, blah, blah, blah. People were like, oh, it underperformed. First off, we know it underperformed. We know that it underperformed in the international market. There's no denying that. But all superhero films have been failing and underperforming internationally. So to sit there and say, oh, this is some badge of honor. Look, we told you it underperformed. Well, we knew it did 6 months ago. Domestically, it did fantastic. It was a huge success domestically. But internationally, yeah, it underperformed. But then you have to take a look at the grand scale of everything, the state of the industry, the state of the genre, so on and so forth, to understand how successful Superman actually was. And then we do know that it did end up making a profit in the long run, with digital, with physical sales, with everything. It made the studio a profit, which is all they're looking for. So maybe pulling it out of the theaters was a smart move for them to make more money, because that is how the industry is moving. The industry is moving towards this idea that, look, when you put a movie in theaters, you might get 3 to 4 weeks total before you might want to pull that movie out, because there's just so much stuff coming out. People aren't going as often. So a big movie, yeah, you're going to go see it, and then you're done. You're going to see it in that first couple weeks, and most people don't after that. So that exclusive window is going to get shorter and shorter over time, because people know I can buy digitally for $30 and me and my family can watch it at home for $30 total, as opposed to going and spending $60 for me and my family to go, plus another $60 on concessions. So that's why there's this shift. That's why there's this change within the industry, within the theatrical chains and how things get released. But again, people don't want to acknowledge that. People don't want to understand that. They see Ted Sarandos say, oh, something underperformed. Again, yes, we knew it underperformed. We knew where it underperformed, how it underperformed. But we also know that, hey, from week to week, its percentage drop was in the 40s and 30s% until week 9. And then in week 9, that's when it jumped over 60% and had a 60% drop, which tells the studios there's success still going on there at the theaters. It is still a success within theater. People are still going to see it even after they put it out digitally. But it is what it is. We move on. Funny Guy says, where is the S? That here, let's see if we can pull it up here. Now, if you take a look, you kind of see like on his lapel there, like right on the when you're looking at it, be on the left side, there's like this big bright shining light coming off of it. Kind of look there in the center, and supposedly that's the S. Apparently that's the S. I don't buy it, but hey, they think that's the S. Alan says, I'm glad Cavill took the news like a pro and asked James Gunn to be the one to tell the audience himself. Yeah, that was a great thing for him to do. It was probably the right thing to do. It's great to see. Movie Talk says, the higher the cope, the more you can see the S. Yes, yeah. These people are delusional, says Donovan. Donovan says, this was such a horrible take. He says, him and Sean have been getting on a similar wavelength. Yeah. Muscles for Soups says, as a Superman fan, why not just give fans both universes? You do Snyder, you do Gunn, say 2030, you do some sort of crisis film and reboot to a new universe going forward. There's a reason for that. And I've talked about this many, many times over the years. So to do that, you like logically, you think you sit there and say, this just makes sense. Do both universes. But you're then pulling money out of your own pocket, essentially. Okay. So, one, the budgets for these types of movies are very, very high, very expensive. So, that's number one. So, you're looking at Superman, which was like $200 million. And then if you did another Justice League movie, you're looking at another $200 to $300 million because of the cast and the scope and scale of it. So, you're looking at another $200, $300 million. So each movie then has to make $600+ million to be successful, to be profitable, to start actually bringing money into the studio. So you have that. And then you have to take a look and say, okay, will they be able to do that? Well, it could, but you have to think people will either A, side with one or side with the other. So they may side with Zack Snyder's version. But that's not fair to James Gunn, who was brought in as an artist, as a visionary, to do his own universe. So he's brought in to do this, and then they do another movie that's similar, and then they're getting more hype, or vice versa. Or James Gunn gets more hype, gets more successful, and then you sit there and say, well, the Snyder stuff shouldn't have even been done. It's a loss. Boo-hoo, sucks. That's one way to look at it. Then another way to look at it is like this. If you do that, you have the potential of confusing your general audience. You tell the general audience that we're moving on. The DCEU, which was a failure towards the end, it was a failure. So we're moving on, and you start the DC universe, and then all of a sudden you come out with something that is connected to the DCEU. That confuses the audience. It confuses the general audience. Why is there two different Supermans? Why are there two this? Why are there two that? And I get that they're talking about having another Batman and so on and so forth. I still think it's a dumb move personally, but they're going to do it, and that's fine. But why would you potentially go against yourself? You would be basically going to war within your own studio, not like personally, but film to film. You would be competing against yourself, and it just doesn't make sense. I've said, do it in graphic novel. Do it in animation. If it's successful in graphic novel, put it in animation. I think that's the best of both worlds, because that won't confuse anybody. It won't compete with what James Gunn is doing in the DCU. You'll still get the story out there. Zack Snyder has already stated that he's interested in doing animation. They almost did animation once before with some things. They almost did comics once before and things when it comes to the Snyderverse. So he's interested in doing it. He'd be willing to do it. So why not just do that? And you're not compromising because Zack Snyder's for it, and you're getting the story you want. But some people don't get that. Funny Guy says, man, it will be a long while before DC gets a multiverse arc. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Hunter Iggy, what if Highlander failed? What are they going to say? I hope it doesn't fail because I love the Highlander series. So I want this one to be successful because I want it to go on. But they won't say anything because they're not going to go see a Henry Cavill movie because they don't care about Henry Cavill. They just care about Henry Cavill as Superman. Hunter Iggy says, James Gunn's Superman movie was still in movie theaters after it went to digital. It was 84 days for James Gunn's Superman movie. Yes, it was. It was in theaters for 84 total days, almost 3 full months it was in theaters. And then it was a few weeks after that that it finally went to streaming. So, yeah, people want to lose their minds. That's all. Donovan says this would self-cannibalize the universe. Exactly. Alan says, I see M and Z. Let's see. Is there an M and Z? I don't see an M. I can kind of see the Z. So, not surprising. Let's see. Johnny Dome. So Grayson dies into DCEU. DCU gets Damian. Robin finally gets respect, especially with flashbacks. Let's see. Men's wear. Men's. Whatever. I have an action. Men's. We are man. I don't know. I'm terrible with names. I can't stand it. He says, I have an actual question. How many Snyder cultists are there? Maybe 300,000? Honestly, I'd be shocked if there was that many. But there are thousands. I mean, there's no denying that there are thousands and thousands of Snyder fans out there. Look, I'm a Snyder fan. If they came out tomorrow and said, hey, we're restoring the Snyderverse, I would actually be excited because I'd love to see it. But that's not what I'm putting my effort and my passion into because look, I want to see I want to see DC succeed. But yeah, there are absolutely thousands and thousands of them. But they're not all crazy cultists. Like Snyder fans, there's thousands of them, but I'd say even a percentage of that are the cultists. Muscle for Soup says, hey, good points of view. Appreciate it. No problem. No problem at all. Funny Guy says, I can't stand YouTube handles too. Oh, boy. Let's see. Donovan says, rational people have already come to terms that Snyder's story is done, and they came to terms with that years ago. Willie Fishtagash. Let's see. Put you in another video. No cheeseburger and Coke. It says, Iyambo Davidson, put you in another video. No cheeseburger and Coke, but says, get on a treadmill. Funny he looks, and he looks like Jar Jar with an afro. Well, look, I mean, he can tell me to get on a treadmill. That's fine. I go to the gym. I go to the gym, not every day, but a few times a week. I mean, I'm out there trying to better myself. So it is what it is. That stuff doesn't make me mad. I think it's more funny than anything whenever they sit there and make fun of my weight because I've always been a bigger guy and I understand that and I'm working on it. But I still think it's kind of funny that they sit there and these people who are such big Snyder fans, are such big fans of what they did, and they love to tout, look what we did for AFSP and suicide prevention, and then they go around and bully like that and say, oh, you're fat, get on a treadmill, stop eating burgers and drinking Cokes, when that's bullying, and that's the number one cause of suicide. So to sit there and say, look what we did for AFSP, and then go and do the exact thing that is the number one cause of suicide, that's pathetic. That's pathetic. Johnny Dome says, Reeve only has Batman. Snyderverse has all members, so Reeve is less confusing to be separate. Yeah. Men's, that's that men's guy again. Men's, our manor. Our wear manor. Men's wear manor. There we go. That's a great answer. The reason I ask is because if Wallets Closed wasn't a big effect, if there's 400,000 max devoted cultists, that boycotted 25. Yeah, I mean, Wallets Closed was stupid. It didn't do, like, come on, look at what it did opening weekend. Because remember, their movement was Wallets Closed July 11th. That's what they pushed. Wallets Closed July 11th. That's how they pushed it. But that weekend was one of the biggest opening weekends of 2025. And then not only that, but it had record-breaking days all week the following week. Even the week after that, the wall it's closed thing failed. And now they're slightly, not as hard, but they are trying to push it for Supergirl as well, which is pretty pathetic. Funny Guy says they use charity as an excuse. They sure do. They sure do. All right. So I asked yesterday for you guys to put up some hot takes, reality check takes. And I think you guys kind of misunderstood. So the idea behind this, and I will ask every single week, is to put something that you've seen, like what I just talked about, those posts that I just talked about, the ridiculous takes that I've seen. That's what I'm looking for. Now, you don't need to put pictures. You could put links. You could even type it out yourself, or you could just put a ridiculous take that you have as well. But you can put it in there. If you're willing to get, kind of shit on by me, then yeah, put your own take in there. I don't care. But that's what the idea is behind this post. You can I'm going to put it up once a week. You throw what you want to talk about in there, what you think the hot take is. If you're in the live chat now, throw a hot take in the live chat now, and I will talk about it there. So number one from Trayvon Purnell says, the Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths trilogy wiped out the DCEU, with Snyderverse, Ayer cut, the Schumacher cut via the Flash attached. Arrowverse, DCAMU, Tomorrowverse, Arkhamverse, all the adjacent DC universe movies, TV shows, and video games that are not continuing on as Elseworlds. Here's the thing. When it comes to that whole aspect of it, we've seen many, many times. And I know that this is something that you love to push all the time, Trayvon, because you've said it many times in the chat. I think I look at it like this. If they really wanted to restart fresh and everything, they would have shown that in there. Like, remove the Snyderverse completely, would have shown that. But we've also seen how many times within comics, not just DC, but other comics and things like that, other publishers and such, they will sit there and they'll say, here's a big event that wipes this all out, but it's still there. It's just, I think we even saw it in the Arrowverse, where like they had that crisis event, but there were still alternate universes still going on at the time. So again, yeah, you could sit there and say that those crisis animated films, quote unquote, wiped everything out. However, there's still going to be multiverses out there because that's what they do in comics. Shaggy Binks 17 says, do you think we'll get to see the Blackest Night storyline in the DCU, in Elseworlds, or animation, or not at all? I would love to see it in live action. I don't think we'll be going that direction with it. I know some people think that it could be heading that way. The thing with Blackest Night is you need a massive build up to it, because you need to establish all these characters, a plethora of characters in DC, to really have it feel and make it feel like there's weight to it, because then you're going to kill off certain characters, and then you have to make that feel like there's some weight behind it, these characters being killed off. So like there's so much to it that you have to do that. Yeah, it sounds great and it would be great to see, but I'd take a look at Civil War that Marvel did, Captain America Civil War. That movie is so shortchanged compared to what the comic is, because the comic line, that whole storyline was huge. There was so much going on, so many different characters, hundreds of characters involved in that storyline of what was going on. But because the film franchise, the MCU, was only going on at that point in time, I think, 6 years at the time? Like it was so limited for what they could actually do, how many characters they had. They actually introduced 2 new characters into that movie haphazardly, and it just didn't work. And I know there's a lot of people out there who think Civil War is the best MCU movie. In my opinion, guys, it's the worst, because it doesn't work. It spits and tarnishes the name of Civil War, that comic line, as well as totally misunderstands every character that has been in the MCU up to that point. That's my opinion. But I think you would have a similar situation happen if you take such a great storyline like Blackest Night and try to adapt it too quickly into the DCU, where it just wouldn't feel the same. It would feel haphazard, like they were just trying to get, because look, this is Blackest Night, people come see it. And I don't want them to do that. I want them to do things right. So that's just me. Art 23-428 says, it's too bad the Snyder fans, monkeys, are getting are getting upset just because we're getting non-Snyder content and they're getting nothing. Well, actually, not really. F them. Honestly, they are upset because they're not getting what they want. So they spread their toxicity, their hatred, their anger as much as possible because they want what they want. And it's sad, it's pathetic, but it is what it is. That's what happens when you have a bunch of entitled people who shouldn't have gotten what they wanted. I mean, let's be honest. I'm happy we got Zack Snyder's Justice League, but there's a part of me that truly believes maybe we shouldn't have gotten it because there's a sense of entitlement now with those people who think, hey, we got this, we deserve everything else. And it's sad and it's pathetic. So, yeah. So that was that. Again, I do that, excuse me, every week, the day before this show, I will post up a similar post to put your hot takes and thoughts. What do we got over here? Funny Guy 9000 says, hot take, I think I prefer Watchmen over Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's a hot take. Look, I like the Watchmen. You know, I might actually agree with you. I don't think it's that hot of a take. I think I do enjoy Watchmen better than Zack Snyder's Justice League. I like Zack Snyder's Justice League, but I think the Watchmen, it just works better. I think it works better as a movie as a whole. Johnny Dome said, he said Wall is closed July 11th, but there is more days than just the 11th. Yeah. Movie Talk says, my DC hot take. I enjoyed Black Adam, and while it had its faults, don't understand the hate it got. I blame The Rock's polarizing personality at the time. Yeah, Black Adam was good. It was an enjoyable film. It probably was the second best DC film post Zack Snyder leaving, I will say. Maybe the third best, second or third best. Because I think if you sit there and take a look at it, it's a good film. It's generic. It's very old school superhero type of film. You know, you got the typical tropes that you see in the older superhero films, but it was still enjoyable. It was enjoyable. It felt a little small, but it was still enjoyable. It was a decent story. The characters were all great. The Rock was great as Black Adam. Do I blame The Rock? I don't think I blame The Rock for it. I just blame the state of DC films at the time because there was so much divisiveness behind it. The audience was pretty much checked out by that time. And The Rock, as much as people want to sit there and say The Rock is a draw and will sell tickets, it does matter what the material actually is. I mean, take a look. He did the Smashing Machine this past year, and it failed miserably, unfortunately, at the box office. It doesn't mean he wasn't good in it. It just, he isn't that draw. But then again, there aren't that many people out there. There aren't that many actors out there who are a draw anymore. You have to have a good story, a story that seems relevant, a story that seems exciting to watch. And because the DCEU at the time was so divisive and so just a mess, let's just say it was a mess, people were like, why should I even invest time to go watch this, even if it has The Rock in it? So that was kind of, and look, they knew that was going to happen, which is why they then threw in Henry Cavill and then released the scene online to try and get people in the theaters to go see it because they knew it wasn't going to do well. Let's see, where else are we at here? Aaron says you need to establish tons of Lanterns lore like all these other I don't know what COTPS is, but yeah, they would if they wanted to do that. Movie Talk says, I understand many don't agree with me, hence why it's my hot take. Yeah, screw you. No, I'm just kidding. Funny Guy, Blackest Night needs to have movies drive a narrative point and a plot point like the Loki series. This Blackest Night would need to, I'm not saying you couldn't accomplish it within like 2 or 3 movies. Once you got to the point of establishing the world, you establish the world, you establish the heroes, you establish like what everything is, and then you could essentially adapt that storyline into about 2 movies. Absolutely. But even then, I don't think it's ever going to happen. Willie Fish to Gash says, who cares how much a movie makes? I'm not getting any money back during tax time because Avatar made $1.5 billion. The studios care how much a movie makes, but again, these people think that a movie makes this much money. Woo, it's a success. It doesn't always come down to money. How many times have we seen over the years a movie doesn't do well at the box office, but becomes a cultural hit after the fact? I can think of Kevin Smith's movie Mallrats offhand. Like, that's a movie that failed miserably at the box office, but became a cultural hit. What's another one? What's it called? I can't remember. It's right there. I just can't think of the name of it. Rocky Horror Picture Show. There we go. That's another one. Rocky Horror Picture Show. I mean, these are movies that became cult classics after failing in the theaters. That's okay. a movie success isn't always just about the money. It's also about the audience reception. It's also about the longevity of the movie. It's always about that. So, to sit there and say, oh, if it didn't make $10 more than its budget, it's a complete failure. No, that's not accurate, because we can take a look at all of the positives that Superman had, which, when you look at the positives that Superman had, comparing it to the same year's superhero films, as well as what happened at the end of the DCEU, you can see the trajectory is moving up. You can see that, hey, people liked it, people wanted to enjoy it, people went back to see it, it was making money, it was doing well week to week. Comparing that to the superhero films of 2025, as well as what happened at the end of the DCEU, you can see there's more excitement for what they did there, which it means it's a success, which means their idea of it being an investment was much more important and accurate than them sitting there saying it needs to make $800 million today for us to continue, because that's not how it works. Hunter Iggy says, don't forget that Zack Snyder's Justice League did not make a profit on HBO Max. So, I mean, nothing really makes profit on HBO Max, because it all comes down to viewers and subscribers and things like that. And it's really hard to decide and determine what makes profit on that. But viewership-wise, it did very, very well. It did very well. Was it the success that they wanted it to be? Maybe, maybe not. I think they were hoping that it would drive more traffic. I think they misjudged how many people actually cared. But I mean, let's face it. The night it came out, it crashed the servers and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of excitement around it. It was successful. Patchy Coffee. Names, guys, come on. I'm sorry. I try. Patchy Coffinado Jr. says, good morning, Slav. You see Netflix or Paramount, since they're still going to court, who thinks going to win to own Warner Brothers? It's going to be Netflix, guys. It's going to be Netflix. Here's the thing. They have enough proof because one of the big things that keeps coming out about this is it's going to be a monopoly. They're going to have a stronghold on this and that, but they're really not. There's other streaming services out there. Plus, they have YouTube, which is a true competitor. So that you got that going for you. But the sale is going to be official. Like, the sale will go through, I guess there's talking about like the latest, the end of May now, because they changed it to an all cash offer. Is it the end of May or end of April? Something like that. I know May. I've heard May a couple times. So maybe it's like the latest May or something like that. So because they changed their offer to an all cash offer, that means the sale will complete much faster than originally thought, where originally it was thought to be the last quarter of 2026 for it to go through. So if the sale happens a lot quicker, that's why they're, obviously having their discussions, the hearings and things like that. Then it has to go through the FCC and all those, and then it has to go across other countries. Other countries have to approve this as well. But when it comes down to it, it's going to go through. Paramount, look, as much as I originally thought Paramount was the better choice, I don't hate the Netflix idea anymore. It's still not the best option is for it to not be sold and for it to stay its own company, but I don't hate it. But I do think Netflix is going to be the one that wins. Or, I mean, they technically already won, but I think it'll go through. Aaron says Black Hand probably in the Lanterns HBO show. That's what we've heard. Yeah, and I think that's partially why some people think things are going to go one way or the other, but we'll see. Funny Guy says, we look at the MCU phase 1, 2, 3. There was a lot of Infinity Stones and Thanos lore sprinkled before Infinity War and Endgame. There was, but if you think about it, even then, like, it was kind of just like haphazardly, because don't remember, not until Endgame, or not Endgame, the first Avengers film, not until the first Avengers film did they even have an idea of what they were doing. And then James Gunn has even spoken about how when he did Guardians of the Galaxy, he had to come up with the whole aspect and idea and stuff behind the Infinity Stones, because even in 2014 that came out, like, even then they still didn't have everything figured out. So it wasn't like they were sitting there and had like this plot point all perfectly thought out and what they were going to do. It was something they built up to. Johnny Dome, these Snyder Bros say I'm coping when the movie didn't flop. It did less than expected, but not a flop. I don't even think it did less than expected. That's the thing. That is the thing that I think is crazy. First off, we don't know what Warner Brothers expected. We don't. We don't know what they expected. They could have sat there and they could have had Superman comes out. We believe it's going to make $500 million. Or they could have sat there and said, we believe it's going to make $800 million. Like, we don't know what their expectation was. We don't, which is fine. We don't need to know what the studio's expectation is. From a fan side, we were all expecting and theorizing what it could make. And yeah, it was less than what I thought. It's less than what other people did. Then there are some people were like, it should make $1 billion. And it's like, come on, you're stupid. But again, did it do less than expected? It doesn't matter what we expect. It matters what the studio expects. And if the studio felt that it should have made more than $617 million, then yeah, it did less than expected. But let's say they just wanted 600. Well, then it surpassed it. But we don't know. Emmanuel Silvera says, let's wait to see how Lanterns does before we start talking Blackest Night. If that show works, then anything is possible. You're not wrong. Starfield is life for shores. The Thing also did bad at cinema, but was a cult classic. The Thing, yeah, that's another great one. Great example. Let's see. I'm going to say your name is Patchy or something like that. So if I'm wrong, sorry. It says, Slav, I wonder what more it is important if the film gets good review or make less money, even though it got a good review, couldn't get a sequel. So obviously studios want money. Okay. Let's say that for a movie to be profitable, it has to make 700 million. Let's just put that 700 million there. Okay. So if a movie needs to make $700 million, but it makes 650 and has terrible reviews, the studio may sit back and say, okay, can we salvage this? Can we get a new writer? Can we get a new director? Can we get something for a sequel to get people excited about it? Because look, we made $650 million, but hey, can we salvage this? And they may greenlight a sequel. It may be like, look, the budget's lower because we only made 650 here. We think that, hey, this movie can make 300 or 400. The sequel can make that much. So the budget might be lower. So sometimes studios will do that. If a movie's if they want it to hit 700 to be profitable, and let's say it makes 300 million, but has rave reviews, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to say, man, this had rave reviews, but it only made $300 million. They may go the opposite way then. They may say, look, we didn't get our money back. Making a sequel, to even think about making it profitable, we couldn't make a sequel on that kind of budget. So no, we're not going to make a sequel. And then on the other side, you also have, or on another side, you have 700 million to be profitable. It makes 600 million and it has rave reviews. Okay, no, it didn't hit the profitable amount, but it had rave reviews. And look, maybe you make the budget just a little bit smaller for the sequel, but it had rave reviews. That means people are enjoying it. And a sequel will probably also get rave reviews. And if you make that budget just a little bit smaller, you could be profitable at a lower amount on the sequel. So that's kind of the mind and the thought process that studios would go through in a scenario like that. So you would just have to kind of, look at it that way. Let's see. Johnny Dome says best option would have been Universal. I disagree, but yeah. Critic Chris says, did I miss anything good? Everything, man. You missed everything that was good. Funny guy, Justice League Salvation would be a fun movie to watch. Critic Chris says, Slav, only on here for half hour today. That's fine. I'm actually going to be closing up shop here momentarily. So this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed this today. Again, this is going to be a weekly type series where I just pull ridiculous information and stupid takes. It doesn't always need to be Snyderverse related. It's just these past couple weeks have been. It can be comic related. It could be DC related at all. But again, I will be doing that and just discussing those ridiculous takes from there. Now, again, I do want to remind everyone that I do have this book coming out very, very soon called The Snyder Effect. So please, if you feel so inclined, support it by going to slavsfreetalk.com, going to the Snyder Effect archive, $3.99 a month to support it, to support me in getting this book completed, as well as, look, I said, I already started the outline on the next book for this because this one is pretty much where I want it to be. Might have to change some things, but yeah, you can go check out everything that I have here so far. And this does get updated from time to time. So you will see updates. You'll see a couple other chapters. There's only about 2 or 3 more chapters that I have pulled out that I need to put up on here. And then what's nice is if you're somebody who wants to prove a point when you're in an argument with somebody, you have all these references here now in one location, which is nice, where you can go get these references and such like that. So yeah, I think you should go support me. Be great. Otherwise, if you can't do that, I understand. You can just support the channel by hitting that like button, hitting subscribe, and sharing the channel around to everybody that you can. So that would be great. Critic Chris says, can these live streams be at 4 p.m.? Just curious, so I don't miss these live streams. I'm trying out. Look, I was laid off a couple weeks ago, so I'm kind of home during the day now, and when my kids are home from school and from daycare and things like that later in the night, I'd rather be there for them at that point in time. So that's kind of why I'm testing out these earlier times to see how the viewership works and everything like that. I may put one back at like 8:30 p.m. and one early in the week. I'm still thinking, depending on how long I'm going to be laid off for, maybe I add a third show to the week. I don't know yet. We'll see what happens. Because again, I'm laid off right now, so yeah, I gotta do what I can do. Funny Guy says you should call this series Comic Book Brain Rot. Yes, indeed. Movie Talk Now says, what kind of man puts family first? I couldn't tell you, man. I don't know. Probably some kind of loser with weird glasses and a black hat and a black shirt on right now. I don't know. All right, guys. But this was fun. Like I said, it was a great time sitting here talking with all of you, conversing with all of you. It's what it's all about. It's what it's all about. So thank you all for watching today. And with all that said, I'll catch you later.